The Breadwinner Chapter 6. They were going to turn her into a boy. As a boy, you'll be able to move in and out of the market, buy what we need, and no one will stop you, Mother said. It's a perfect solution, Mrs. Weir said. You'll be our cousin from Jalalabad, Noria said. Come to stay with us while our father is away. Parvana stared at the three of them. It was as though they were speaking a foreign language, and she didn't have a clue what they were saying. If anyone asks about you, we'll say that you've gone to stay with an aunt in Kunda's, Mother said. But no one will ask about you. At these words, Parvana turned her head sharply to glare at her sister. If ever there was a time to say something mean, this was it. But she couldn't think of anything. After all, what Noria said was true. None of her friends had seen her since the Taliban closed the schools. Her relatives were scattered to different parts of the country, even to different countries. There was no one to ask about her. You'll wear Hussein's clothes. Mother's voice caught, and for a moment it seemed as though she would cry, but she got control of herself again. They will be a bit big for you, but we can make some adjustments if we have to. She glanced over at Mrs. Weir. Those clothes have been idle long enough. It's time they were put to good use. Parvana guessed Mrs. Weir and her mother had been talking long and hard while she was asleep. She was glad of that. Her mother already looked better, but that didn't mean she was ready to give in. It won't work, she said. I won't look like a boy. I have long hair. Noria opened the cupboard door, took out the sewing kit, and slowly opened it up. It looked to Parvana as if Noria was having too much fun as she lifted out the scissors and snapped them open and shut a few times. You're not cutting my hair! Parvana's hands flew up to her head. How else will you look like a boy? Mother asked. Cut Noria's hair. She's the oldest. It's her responsibility to look after me, not my responsibility to look after her. No one would believe me to be a boy, Noria said calmly, looking down at her body. Noria, being calm, just made Parvana madder. I'll look like that soon, Parvana said. You wish. We'll deal with that when the time comes, Mother said quickly, heading off the fight she knew was coming. Until then, we have no choice. Someone has to be able to go outside, and you are the one most likely to look like a boy. Parvana thought about it. Her fingers reached up her back to see how long her hair had grown. It has to be your decision, Mrs. Weir said. We can force you to cut off your hair, but you're still the one who has to go outside and act the part. We know this is a big thing we're asking, but I think you can do it. How about it? Parvana realized Mrs. Weir was right. They could hold her down and cut off her hair, but for anything more, they needed her cooperation. In the end, it really was her decision. All right, I'll do it. Well done, said Mrs. Weir. That's the spirit. Noria snapped the scissors again. I'll cut your hair. I'll cut it, Mother said, taking the scissors away. Let's do it now, Parvana. Thinking about it won't make it any easier. Parvana and her mother went into the washroom, where the cement floor would make it easier to clean up the cut-off hair. Mother took Hussein's clothes in with them. Do you want to watch? Mother asked, nodding toward the mirror. Parvana shook her head, then changed her mind. If this was the last she would see of her hair, then she wanted to see it for as long as she could. Mother worked quickly. First, she cut off a huge chunk in a straight line at her neck. She held it up for Parvana to see. I have a lovely piece of ribbon packed away. We'll tie this up with it, and you can keep it. Parvana looked at the hair in her mother's hand. While it was on her head, it had seemed important. It didn't seem important anymore. No thanks, said Parvana. Throw it away. Her mother's lips tightened. If you're going to sulk about it, she said, and she tossed the hair down to the floor. As more and more hair fell away, Parvana began to feel like a different person. Her whole face showed. What was left of her hair was short and shaggy. It curled in a soft fringe around her ears. There were no long parts to fall into her eyes, to become tangled on a windy day, to take forever to dry when she got caught in the rain. Her forehead seemed bigger. Her eyes seemed bigger too, maybe because she was opening them so wide to be able to see everything. Her ears seemed to stick out from her head. They look a little funny, Parvana thought, but a nice sort of funny. I have a nice face, she decided. Mother rubbed her hands brusquely over Parvana's head to rub away any stray hairs. Change your clothes, she said. Then she left the washroom. All alone, Parvana's hand crept up to the top of her head. Touching her hair gingerly at first, she soon rubbed the palm of her hand all over her head. Her new hair felt both bristly and soft. It tickled the skin on her hand. I like it, she thought, and she smiled. She took off her own clothes and put on her brother's. Hossein's shower kameez was pale green, both the loose shirt and the baggy trousers. The shirt hung down very low, and the trousers were too long, but by rolling them up at the waist, they were all right. There was a pocket sewn into the left side of the shirt near the chest. It was just big enough to hold money and maybe a few candies, if she ever had candies again. There was another pocket on the front. It was nice to have pockets. Her girl clothes didn't have any. Parvana, haven't you changed yet? Parvana stopped looking at herself in the mirror and joined her family. The first face she saw was Miriam's. Her little sister looked as if she couldn't quite figure out who had walked into the room. It's me, Miriam, Parvana said. Parvana! Miriam laughed as she recognized her. Hossein, her mother whispered. You look less ugly as a boy than you do as a girl, Noria said quickly. If Mother started remembering Hossein, she'd just start crying again. You look fine, said Mrs. Weira. Put this on. Mother handed Parvana a cap. Parvana put it on her head. It was a white cap with beautiful embroidery all over it. Maybe she'd never wear her special red shalwar kameez again, but she had a new cap to take its place. Here's some money, her mother said. Buy what you were not able to buy yesterday. She placed a patu around Parvana's shoulder. It was her father's. Hurry back. Parvana tucked the money into her new pocket. She slipped her feet into her sandals, then reached for her chador. You won't be needing that, Noria said. Parvana had forgotten. Suddenly she was scared. Everyone would see her face. They would know she wasn't a boy. She turned around to plead with her mother. Don't make me do this. You see, Noria said in her nastiest voice, I told you she was too scared. It's easy to call someone else scared when you're safe inside your home all the time, Parvana shot back. She spun around and went outside, slamming the door behind her. Out on the street, she kept waiting for people to point at her and call her a fake. No one did. No one paid any attention to her at all. The more she was ignored, the more confident she felt. When she had gone into the market with her father, she had kept silent and covered up her face as much as possible. She had tried her best to be invisible. Now, with her face open to the sunshine, she was invisible in another way. She was just one more boy on the street. She was nothing worth paying attention to. When she came to the shop that sold tea, rice, and other groceries, she hesitated for a slight moment, then walked boldly through the door. I'm a boy, she kept saying to herself. It gave her courage. What do you want? The grocer asked. Some tea, Parvana stammered out. How much? What kind? The grocer was gruff, but it was ordinary bad mood gruff, not gruff out of anger that there was a girl in his shop. Parvana pointed to the brand of tea they usually had at home. Is that the cheapest? This one is the cheapest. He showed her another one. I'll take the cheapest one. I also need 5 pounds of rice. Don't tell me you want the cheapest kind, big spender. Parvana left the shop with rice and tea, feeling very proud of herself. I can do this, she whispered. Onions were cheap at the vegetable stand. She bought a few. Look what I got, Parvana exclaimed as she burst through the door of her home. I did it! I did the shopping and nobody bothered me! Parvana! Miriam ran to her and gave her a hug. Parvana hugged her back as best she could with her arms full of groceries. Mother was back on the toe shack facing the wall, her back to the room. Ali sat beside her, patting her and saying, Ma, 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 trying to get her attention. Noria took the groceries from Parvana and handed her the water bucket. As long as you've got your sandals on, she said. What's wrong with Mother now? Shh! Not so loud. Do you want her to hear you? She got upset after seeing you in Hossein's clothes. Can you blame her? Also, Mrs. Weira went home, and that's made her sad. Now, please go and get water. I got water yesterday. I had a lot of cleaning to do. Holly was almost out of diapers. Would you rather wash diapers than fetch water? Parvana fetched the water. Keep those clothes on, Noria said when Parvana returned. I've been thinking about this. If you're going to be a boy outside, you should be a boy inside, too. What if somebody comes by? That made sense to Parvana. What about Mother? Won't it upset her to see me in Hossein's clothes all the time? She'll have to get used to it. For the first time, Parvana noticed the tired lines on Noria's face. She looked much older than 17. I'll help you with supper, she offered. You? Help? All you do is get in my way. Parvana fumed. It was impossible to be nice to Noria. Mother got up for supper and made an effort to be cheerful. She complimented Parvana on her shopping success, but seemed to have a hard time looking at her. Later that night, when they were all stretched out for sleep, Ali fussed a little. Go to sleep, Hossein, Parvana heard her mother say. Go to sleep, my son.